is my great honor to welcome to the stage our 2023 Austin College Posey Leadership Award recipient, Sylvia Acevedo.
Thanks. Great job. Thank you. Thank you very much. I've just such a wonderful experience. Thank you, President O'Day. Thank you, Board of Trustees. Thanks to all the professors, all these staff, and all the students, and all of you who are here today. I've really enjoyed my time here at Austin College and Sherman, Texas as well. And you heard, Nick's, Rocket Estee's great introduction. And it reminded me of a call I got in the mid-2000s from a researcher at Stanford University. Because they called me and they said, Sylvia, turns out we've been doing our research and you're one of the first Hispanics, male or female, to have ever gotten a graduate engineering degree at Stanford. And look at all the things that you've accomplished. So we want to figure out, how was that? Were your families rich ranchers? Were they college professors? And I was like, no, all my grandparents were from Mexico. My mom was born from Mexico. My family struggled with money, so much so that one time we had no money and we had to go live with other family members, 11 people, one bathroom. And and because the only rent house we could afford was in this impoverished area in Las Cruces, New Mexico, with dirt streets, that's the last place there was a meningitis epidemic. And my younger sister, Laura, got sick. Many people died, but her fever changed her brain forever, and she became special in a Special Olympics kind of way. And so I said, no, my parents weren't rich ranchers or didn't have those experiences. So the question kept coming, well, so how was it? Because it turns out at the time, Stanford wasn't even recruiting from that part of the country. So they said, so how was it that you knew about Stanford? And then how was it that you got in? You were qualified to get in. And then how was it that not only that you got in, you graduated, and then you had this amazing career? And I didn't know the answer. But it made me start pondering and start reading and researching. So how could it have been? It wasn't the luck of the DNA. And then I found this book, Bridges Out of Poverty, by Dr. Ruby Payne. And she said, to come out of poverty, you kind of need one of 4 bridges out of poverty. You either have to have this compelling vision, a dream, something that takes over, that just really inspires you, that no matter what, you're going to achieve that. Or another thing could be a mentor, a teacher, somebody who profoundly changes your life, who really helps you, guides you, that caring adult. Or it could be too painful to stay. And that was really hard for me to understand. But it could be too painful to stay. Or the 4th thing is, and you know this from a lot of musicians or athletes, you just have an extraordinary skill that lifts you out of poverty. And then the more I thought about it and tried to apply that into my life, I thought about it. And I thought, what was my vision? What was my dream? Well, I'm a kid of the space age. And so I would see all these people, but they were mostly men. But still, I loved what they were doing. And they were planning about getting somebody on the moon, and they were building these rockets. And I thought, I want to be one of those. So that really inspired me. So I had that vision, that dream. And then also, I saw that they needed these things called computers. And it was IBM that was developing them. And I remember going into the Adobe library in Las Cruces, New Mexico, the Thomas Brannigan Library, a small Adobe building, but going into the magazine racks and looking at all those pictures and thinking, what does it take to be one of those people? Well, they were all men, so I'm like, that's not going to happen. But what does it take? And I thought, they have to be good at science, and they have to be good at math. And so I began applying myself to be really good at science and math. But I had that vision. That's what I want to do in my life. But then the next one was that caring adult, that mentor. And I thought back into my life, and I realized that I had many caring adults in my life. I was born actually in South Dakota, in Ellsworth Air Force Base. But my family moved back when I was 2 years old. And my mother had been born in Mexico, so living in South Dakota taught her how important it was to speak Spanish and English fluently. So when we returned back to Las Cruces, New Mexico, we were Baptists, and she went to the Baptist church, and there was a bilingual missionary from San Antonio, Texas. And she said, teach my daughter English. So I learned my first words in English, and my first song in English was Jesus Loves the Little Children. And I thought, okay, there was that caring adult. There was those troop leaders who really changed my life forever. And they taught me 2 incredible skills that really have helped me my entire life. The first one was, how do you create opportunity? Because my family didn't have money. The only way I could stay in Girl Scouts was by selling those wonderful, ubiquitous cookies. And so she said, well, Sylvia, let's figure out how many cookies you want to sell. What do you want to do? And I said, I want to do everything. And she was like, well, you're going to have to sell a lot of cookies. But it was so important because she taught me how you can make your dreams come true. How do you make your goals and dreams come true? She said, you set the goal, and then you break it up into smaller pieces. And then you work really hard, and when you run into trouble, you ask for help. And you know, at that moment, I had that light bulb moment, like, wow, that's how you make your dreams come true. Because if you're raised in poverty or near poverty, you don't know how to do that. Because if you did, you wouldn't be in that situation. So learning how to create opportunity was a huge benefit to me, and I began at that age of 7 building that muscle of creating opportunity. But there was another muscle that I began developing that she taught me, which was never to leave the side of a cookie sale until you hear no 3 times. And so that taught me persistence, resilience. How do you get to a yes? And so I began at a very young age working those 2 muscles. The other one was my 4th grade teacher. She showed this picture of Stanford University. She was showing us a bunch of pictures. But remember, I grew up in Las Cruces, New Mexico, a really dry place. I saw those beautiful green lawn, the red tile roof, limestone. I said, I want to go there. She walked to my desk. She looked at me and she said, Sylvia, that's one of the best schools in America, maybe the world. But then she looked me square in the eye and she said, you can go there. So that 9-year-old started exercising and flexing that muscle, setting that goal, making that dream, breaking it down to smaller pieces, got to get good grades, lots of extracurriculars. So I realized I had a lot of mentors and guides. Now, the one that really stumped me was too painful to stay. Because by the time I got that phone call from Stanford University, I had a nice house in Tarrytown, Austin. So it's like, too painful to stay. Of course you want to leave that. But the more I thought back, I realized when you're growing up and that's all you know, that's home. That's familiar. That's where everybody knows your name. That's where you get support. So actually leaving that is really hard. So I thought, when was it too painful to stay? Well, when my sister got sick with meningitis and we lived in that dirt neighborhood, I realized by my mom moving us to another part of town where the streets were paved, there were a lot more opportunities. But the one time that it really remembered was when middle school. Now think about when you're in middle school. No one wants to carry a lunch sack in middle school. You want to buy your lunch. And so I every day would go with my friends and buy my lunch. But there was this one time when my family didn't have any money. And my parents came to me because I had, by that time, begun saving to go to college. And I had some cash, and they said, we need all the cash. And I thought, okay. I saved enough money so I could get to Wednesday for lunch, but my dad didn't get paid till Thursday. So Thursday came and went, and I looked everywhere, under the cushions. I went, this is kind of an old example, but I went to phone booths and looked to see if there was any change left. And I only had enough money for 2 milk cartons. And so can think about that girl. I was really embarrassed. I was with my friends like every day going to lunch. And right before it was my turn, I said, hey, I forgot something. I said, I got to go to my locker. I waited outside until my friends got situated, till the line went away. Went up to the lunch lady that was there every day, and I said, I put out all the coins I had, and it was just enough for 2 milks. And she looked at me and she said, it's okay, we have an extra meal today. And she saw my shame. She saw my shame. And I thought, never do I ever want to be in that situation again. So that was too painful to stay. But the next one also, then I thought, what extraordinary skills did I have? Well, I actually played music really well. I was a percussionist, and I was fortunate enough to gotten a full ride scholarship to go to college, to go to actually 2 colleges. But also, I kind of like this other thing of math and science. And when I was in high school, there was this great opportunity to have a full ride math engineering scholarship. There was only one in the entire state. And to make sure there was no favoritism, they stripped the name off. And it was full of math problems. It was really hard. And I really applied myself. And then I submitted it. I didn't hear anything. One day I'm in class, and over the loudspeakers, our principal, Rusty, says, "Sylvia Acevedo, would you please come to the principal's office?" I'm thinking, uh-oh, there's something wrong. And I go there, and there's 2 men, they're engineers. And they said, we're on the scholarship committee, and what was purported to be from you, with your name on it, was actually the highest score. And I'm thinking, that's kind of interesting. I said, well, yeah, that was me. And they said, well, we've never had a female win this. And no one of your background has ever won this. And they went and stepped me through the entire exam again, which I was more than happy to do. And so at that point, they said, well, I guess it was really you. So when I thought of that memory, I thought, okay, I had an extraordinary skill. So when I read that book and I thought about all those things, I realized, oh my gosh, I had all 4. I had that vision, that dream of NASA, of Stanford, of being an engineer in computers. I was fortunate enough to have mentors, guides, teachers, people who saw my potential, so much so that I believed in myself. I had those experiences of saying, I've got to go. This is too painful to stay. I'm going to get out of poverty. And I did. And then the 4th one was having those extraordinary skills. And they really did take me places. I did get to work for NASA. I did get to work as a rocket scientist. I did get to work at IBM. And that was an amazing and thrilling time. And that actually launched a career, because who would have known that having those kind of math skills, that kind of technology skills, that kind of system skills would be the exact right skills to be graduating from Stanford University with a graduate degree in engineering right when Silicon Valley is taking off. And so I was able to have truly a life of my potential. And then that call came, and I really began thinking about that and thinking about how fortunate I was in my life. But then I realized there was this great quote from Maya Angelou: when you get, give. When you learn, teach. And I thought about my life, and I thought about all those circumstances that had caused me to have the life of my dreams. It wasn't just my DNA. It wasn't luck. It was all those forces that enabled me to live a life of that potential. And so I began to think, it's time for me to really put the emphasis on giving others that opportunity. And I began focusing on how do I give others the opportunity to live a life of their potential, to help them understand that they can have opportunity and they can have hope. And around that time, my neighbor came to me. And he said, Sylvia, I was still working as an executive at Dell, and he said, Sylvia, there's a school and they need kids to read, and bilingual would work really well. When I went to that school, the little girl's dental hygiene was horrible. So every day, every time I would go, I went and bought all these toothbrushes at Target and little toothpaste, and we would, at the end of our lesson, would brush our teeth. And every week I'd say, remember your toothbrush. And she'd always forget. So the second week, she'd forget. Third week, but I'd always have that extra brush. The 5th week, she remembered her toothbrush. And I said, that's great, you remembered your toothbrush. She said, no, now everybody in my house has a toothbrush. And that really stuck me. But remember, I'm working in technology. I didn't know about all the changes going on. So I went to the teacher, indignant, and I said, did you know that little girl? She needed a toothbrush. And she said, hey, Sylvia, you got $35. This kid broke his glasses. She said, look around, every kid here. They need books. They need their teeth fixed. They need their glasses. And I thought, okay, you know, and she said, but it's impossible. There's just thousands of kids that need help. And I thought to myself, okay, teachers are great at one-on-one and one-on-few. I'm a rocket scientist. It's just about scale. So I began to focus on how do I scale this economically. And so at that time in Austin, Texas, there was a real mismatch between a lot of the growth in the population in need, predominantly in the Spanish-speaking population. And so I began really focusing on making sure that all the nonprofits in Austin, if they were serving that population, had material in Spanish and had volunteers who could speak Spanish as well, or staff that spoke Spanish. It turns out that at the time, there was almost no one that had material in Spanish, or volunteers or staff that spoke in Spanish. Within a couple of years, every one of them had material in Spanish, and even Spanish speakers on staff. But we also began focusing on the parents, to teaching them how important it was to graduate from high school and go on to college. That would be lifetime benefits for them. So some of the achievements that we had was, you know, when I found out sometimes kids have books, but they didn't have any place to put them, I partnered with a nonprofit, and we created over 10,000 home libraries, bookshelves for over 10,000 homes. We also gave away over 250,000 books. Sometimes these were the very first books in kids' homes. I also learned that at that time, the #1 reason kids miss school in elementary school is dental pain. And so I went to St. David's, which was the first largest nonprofit or foundation in Austin, and Earl Maxwell was the head, and I talked to him about this, and he said, you know, Sylvia, I had no idea. I had no idea. And so we reconfigured his entire foundation and put money around dental, and they created 2 dental vans serving all the kids in Austin who had dental issues. I also discovered that in Title I schools, 20% of the kids needed glasses and never got them. And so we created a vision van, and when we went to the Lions Club, they said, how many glasses do you have? I said, oh, we need thousands. They said, well, we got 100. So we created the vision van with a lot of amazing partners, 10,000 or more parents with great outcomes, over 300 nonprofits changed. And also because of the importance of having kids have fun and play, over 25,000 sports balls were also given away. But at the time, I also got to meet this guy, Lee Posey. And today is incredibly special because I knew Lee and Sally Posey. Because one day this tall, lanky guy comes to Austin and he said, I want to start a girls' school in Austin. And the superintendent asked me to be the volunteer to convince a community to give up the middle school, not an easy task, so that it could be repurposed for the Ann Richards School. We did that. I was also on the selection committee for Jeannie Goka, who was an amazing principal of the Ann Richards School. And not only did I get and really be involved, I learned so much. I learned one of the reasons for their spectacular success is they realized that the way girls learn and lead is a very different way. They don't have hierarchical seats where they all sit one in a row. They actually sit in groups and pods, and that's how they learn. And I really took a lot of great lessons from that, but it was a great honor. And I was just overwhelmed with Lee and Sally Posey's amazing generosity. But I took those lessons from the Ann Richards School to the next thing I did, which is the Girl Scouts of the USA. And when I joined the Girl Scouts of the USA, the #1 thing parents came up to me and said, why should my daughter be in Girl Scouts? She's just going to sell cookies and make macaroni necklaces. And so I realized we needed to have a focus. And at that time, girls all had a mobile device in their hand. And so we focused on how do we give girls the tools that they need to succeed in today's world. See, when Juliet Gordon Lowe started Girl Scouts, it was moving from an agricultural age to the industrial age. And actually the first badges in Girl Scouts were for things like contractor, electrician, even a pilot's license. So where we were now with Girl Scouts is moving from the industrial age to the digital age. So we needed to have girls that experiences, give them those experiences that were relevant today. So we created 126 new badges in cybersecurity, STEM, coding, automotive, so many great things. Also a partnership with North Face for the great outdoors. Those cookie boxes are the world's greatest entrepreneurship program for girls. And so We did entrepreneurship badges as well, and then civics. Unfortunately, civics has been taken out of so many American classrooms, and we made sure that girls and Girl Scouts had badges from 5 years old to 18. And I'm proud to say, the last few years, 4 state laws per year have been changed by girls and Girl Scouts because of that. But you know, I also love the reach. You know, Girl Scouts, the cookie sales, they reach every community, but we wanted to make sure we use that reach so that girls across America in rural, urban, and suburban communities would get the benefits of Girl Scouts. And the one picture with the family right there in the corner, it really touches me because I knew we were really making an impact when I was in Wichita Falls and there had been an ice storm. And we were afraid no one would show up. Over 100 girls showed up. And this family, I met them. And the wife looks to the husband and she said to me, you know, he drove 4 hours in an ice storm to be here. And I said, sir, Girl Scouts is all about safety. And he looked at me and he goes, in that laconic Kansas way, he goes, you don't know much about Kansas, do you? And I said, no, sir, I do not. And he said, our heyday was after World War II. We had plenty of blue-collar jobs. Since then, our workforce has been decimated and there's an opioid epidemic. He said, what my daughter is learning in Girl Scouts is teaching her the skills that she needs today and about leadership, about technology, and they're giving her a leg up in life. He says, it's more dangerous for me to sit on my couch and not come here. And I also realized the great impact when I was in Birmingham, Alabama, and I'd given a speech, and there were all these people on the side waiting to talk to me. So after my talk, I went up to them, and they said, we just want to thank you. We're from a very rural part of Alabama. We've driven hours to come here. But because of the cybersecurity badges, our daughters wrote their college essays. And each one of them got a full ride college scholarship because of that. And they said, believe me, there is no one in our hometown that has any access to cybersecurity. But because of Girl Scouts, our girls are going to have a grand future, and they thanked me. So I was so grateful that we were able to reach rural, urban, and suburban girls. And so that concept of real servant leadership, not focusing on myself, but how can I make that opportunity for others? How can I give them the same opportunities to live a life of their potential? Well, along the way, I've gotten a lot of notoriety and notice, and I've been able to speak in Washington, be interviewed on television, get a Captain of Industry award from my, the Industrial Engineering Honor Society. Because we reached so many families, the government of Mexico noticed, and in 2010, the President of Mexico, through his emissary, gave me the Altly Award, which is the highest civil rights award that the Mexican government gives out to a non-Mexican citizen. So it was an amazing honor. In addition to that, Duke University gave me an honorary doctorate of science. And I'm the first Hispanic, male or female, to have gotten an honorary doctorate of science. So that was a huge honor. And then when I got to work at the White House, President Obama called me up and invited me to come to the White House and thanked me because we were able to bring together and solve a big problem, which was dual language curriculum. And partnering with the Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, and the Department of Education, we were able to change the policy so federal funding could be used so that curriculums could be in dual language, so that kids could keep their native language but learn English faster and fluently. And the Department of Defense was a real big supporter because they knew that they could keep America safe from those who would do us harm if we had more native speakers in English and in other languages as well. So I started my talk by asking a question because I was trying to answer that question myself. So how was it that I was able to live a life of my potential? How was it that I was able to really live a life of my dreams? Well, it wasn't my DNA. It was really thanks to people like you. And it was really thanks to the servant leadership of so many people. It truly is when you give, you get, when you get, you give, and when you learn, you teach. And I was very fortunate to have these amazing experiences, but as I was talking to students, I realized I couldn't reach all the students. And so I wrote a book called Path to the Stars. I consider it you know, like when you put your hand in an elevator, keep the doors open? I sort of think of the book like that middle school book, like, wait, just take a modicum of science because the world is being redesigned around technology and girls need to know just a little bit, at least, so that you can really be part of designing the world around us. So I wrote Path to the Stars, Camino a las Estrellas in Spanish, because I didn't want just as a trailblazer, there isn't a path ahead of you, but I wanted to leave not just a path, but actually a highway of opportunity for those that are coming behind me, because I know I was so grateful to be a beneficiary of so much goodness from others, and I am incredibly grateful. And today I stand before you being incredibly grateful to be the Posey Leadership Award honoree. Because I knew the Posleys and because I know their just great generosity, it is really a special honor. It is really a great honor to have actually come here to Austin College and to meet all of you. It's been a wonderful experience. And so I want to thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. I will say I am proud to be a Ruth. So thank you very much. Thank you.